John from Ripewave Audio for an unboxing and initial setup of the JBL Modern Audio MA9100HP. This is the flagship of the series that they just released, what they call MA Modern Audio. We did an overview video last month of the whole series, which included the entry-level model, which is the MA310, which is about $400, all the way up to this flagship. So we covered the MA510, 710, 7100 HP, and this, the 9100 HP, which is about $1,600. So quite a range in price in the whole series, but you also gain more channels, more amplification, and a few more HDMI inputs as you move up the line, as well as Direct Live. So catch that video to see all the details on what we saw there. So we thought we'd start with the flagship so you would know the most you could expect from this series. And of course, as you move down the line into the lower cost models, things drop off. So this is the best that series can be. So let's get this opened up. We've had this for about a week and we're finally getting to this. I was a little bit delayed, but here it comes in the box. You see the picture of it in the front here. And of course, if we spin it around, the picture here shows the connections on it. Of course, you're going to see a better picture in the overview video that we did. And I know a lot of you have been writing in with questions already, what you want to see. You want to see the mobile app and how it works and how it does the calibration, which is a calibration tool that's included with this unit. And it is a technology that Harman JBL has been using in older models. They resurrected that, put this in this new unit and called it Modern Audio. But they said it works pretty good for the no-cost option, of course. And then this one's going to have a Direct Live option for no Direct Live bass control. Because it's only one subwoofer out. We do not, even though there's two physical ports, and we see this all the time, and even JBL calls this unit a .2 when it's really a .1 with two outputs, subwoofer outputs in parallel. So let's see what's inside this. All right, we do have some literature that's documented. I'm not going to call this a printed manual yet until we take a look inside. But we see usually these are just instruction sets. I have been looking at the manual online, and a lot of that first video was based off of looking at that. We have a important safety instructions, and it looks like every language of the world is in there. We have a card about Roon. There is some Roon support in this, so we can do the licensing for Roon. And then there is a card here about transforming your listening to the next level with Dirac. So we've got a card so we can get up to speed with the Dirac license. We have a thick, quick start guide. And again, I think what you got here is a lot of languages in quick start. Not really a printed manual. So go to their website, download the real manual, and then you get the full instructions. From what I can tell, the manual is a little better than what we see with the JBL synthesis, but still is not at the same level as we see from other manufacturers. This is an accessories box, and in here you'll find the power cord and the remote, and the remote has been updated for this Modern Audio. It's a different remote than the synthesis products. It's not a large remote. It's a plastic remote, but a little bit glossy on the front. Of course, I got the white color on here. This unit's available in black and white. It did give you batteries with this. I'm going to leave them sealed up and put in some batteries of my own. This will reveal if there's any backlight function. What we've seen with some cases, even though there's not a backlight button, if you move a remote, they will light up with motion. But there's no indication from JBL in the manuals, etc., that this has backlight. Well, they give you an indicator up here when you push a button that you pushed one. But so far, no indication of backlight. And we have 3 antennas. That's for Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and maybe one's Bluetooth transmit versus receive. I think on these HP models, there's Bluetooth transmit, but not on the lower end models. Now, after we've taken it out of the dense foam that this is packed in, we see it has a soft bag that it's put in, which is a nice touch. This is something we see like on our Emotiva amplifiers. And our RMC1, I think, got shipped that way too. Now this unit isn't heavy. I think it's about 17 pounds. This is the heaviest of the series. It's the deepest of the series, but it's not heavy and it's not deep and it's not large compared to other receivers that we bring in-house here. Now I know somebody had commented that they've seen this at Best Buy stores. They went and looked and they felt that it was plasticky. The case, the chassis here, the cover, which has vents on the top here, this is all metal. The sides don't have ventilation, and then there's some ventilation on the bottom. This front piece, it feels like it's glass-like, but I would probably say it's like a plexiglass. I think this is a nice kind of departure from a metal, something a little different, something a little more modern, if you will. And I don't mind that it's plexiglass and not glass. I don't think it is glass. It doesn't feel cool enough to be glass. Let's start here with the volume knob. There's little detents in here. You can feel that as you move around. A little bit of a click sound as you move it. If you push it in, that will handle your mute. And then the other knob over here is your input select. And of course you have your display and a few buttons along the bottom. And the functions on the front are largely replicated on the remote. I don't think the remote offers much more functionality. Maybe it's the exact same functionality as you have on the front. Everything but the display is on the remote that I can tell. Now let's turn this around to the back. And you can see here what we showed in the other video. The HDMI ports around the top here, and then you've got your speaker terminals along the bottom. Power is removable. This is auto-selecting on the power, so no matter where you're in the world, you can use this unit. And then you've got your inputs, including a phono input on this. There are no pre-outs, so you cannot use this as a preamplifier to go out to external amplifiers. You have to use the amplifiers that are built into this unit. So this is a departure from other receivers that we've brought in that handle immersive. Everything that we've tested to date in-house has had pre-outs. So this means that my testing process will be different. I'm going to have to get longer speaker wires to go back to my rear surrounds and my side surrounds. Now this unit will support a 5-channel ear level. That's side surrounds, front, left, right, and center, and 2 rows of heights. Or if you want to have rear surrounds, you're down to 1 row of heights. And again, 1 subwoofer, but there's 2 terminals on the back. You could have multiple subwoofers, but they're all going to be sharing the same signal. If you're going to be using this with banana plugs, this does ship with plugs in the speaker terminals that you have to remove. Once they're removed, you can put the banana plugs in place. The other thing I will point out, there is a USB connection on the back of this. There are no I/O connections on the front. What we do see though here is a power toggle switch, which we like to see. So it gives you an extra assurance that this thing is all powered down properly before you start putting wires in and out of the unit. We'll get this into position, put the wires on, and commence the setup process. Before we go into setup mode, I just wanted to show you the quick basic wiring we've done already. We put the power cord on. The power is off while we're doing this. We wired front, left, right, and center for the speakers. So we've got here using banana plug. So I removed the little plug that was blocking that. I think there's some European requirements that say you have to put that plug in there when it's shipping and if you're not using it. And then the center, I don't have a banana plug for it, so it's just wired directly. And as far as the side surround and the heights and the rear surround speakers that we have, I don't have wires currently that will go back to this unit, so I'll have to figure that out before we balance out the full system. But we'll get that going. It's not a hard thing. But I just wanted to show you, for inputs, we're using HDMI. This is all kind of backwards from what I normally see on a unit. You know, you have your front here on the right versus the left. Usually I see front over the left and it goes over to the heights this way. Of course, every brand does things a little different. And the same is with the HDMI. So you have your outputs first, and I'm using two outputs, one to the television and one that's going to my capture, so I can give you some screenshots on my MacBook that will come into the video. There's 6 HDMI inputs on this. We're going to be using an Apple TV on input 1 and our ultra high definition Blu-ray player on input 2. So that will be our basic setup, and now we can move forward with the configuration. And we have our antennas plugged in, but you can see here it may not quite fit under here, so you can always just bend those down if they're in the way. And I'll turn this around so we can start the setup, right? And this is one thing I like about this rack here, is with having just 3 legs, and because I change things around a lot, I can just spin this into place. Okay. And I'll just fix that wire in the back so it lays flat. Actually, I can put these antennas facing up. They actually fit once it's turned around. So I'll do that. And now I will turn the power switch in the back first. Or let's remove this for clarity. This is just a sticker. With that off, we'll turn the power switch on the back. So that isn't turning this on yet, but we do see an orange glow on the power button here. So we'll turn that on. And we're getting a nice orange glow underneath here. And now it's going through a startup process. We're going to measure the timing on the startup so you'll know. And it's defaulting to 7.1.2 configuration for HDMI with volume at 30 with no wireless. When we get into the setup, we'll explore that further. I do like this orange glow that we're seeing here. And look at this when I change the volume. That is being indicated on the screen. That's just kind of a nice touch. And then the input select. And then I could pick one and hit enter. Let's go back to HDMI 1. I like that. I mean, I think this is a gorgeous looking interface. I know some people won't like the plastic knobs and the plexiglass front, but I think it works. Look, it's not pretending to be metal, and that's why I think this works. It's something different, and I think it's a cool look. Does it feel as nice in the hand as a real metal knob? No, but it has a nice touch to it regardless. So I'm not going to ding them from for the fact that this is a plastic knobs on the volume or on the input select. And then if we hit mute, there's the mute, and then that's not mute. I think it's pretty clear what's going on when you hit these buttons. And of course you have a menu screen here. When you hit the menu button, you can use the input select to navigate and enter. We can actually do some setup right through here, which is nice. There is a back button, and then there's a dim button here that I imagine has something to do. Let's take that out of the menu, but if you hit the dim button, yeah, everything including this glow on the bottom is dimming when you hit, and that's fully off and that's fully on. And you can change the surround mode from Dolby Surround to native to all stereo, 2.1, 2.0, Neural X, Dolby Surround, and so forth. So at this point, I'm excited about going in and setting this up and showing you what we can see. Now, getting into the configuration and setup of the 9100 HP, one thing that you'll notice is, unlike other receivers and processors that we brought in and reviewed, there's no wizard that pops up when you first power up the unit, nor is there a wizard you can get into through the setup buttons. You have to know your way through the menu screens. And for this, we do pull up the manual and we do find some notes before we even want to get into this to make sure we're planning this out and doing it in the right way. The first thing that JBL has you do is download the Premium Audio Setup app. Not to be confused with Premium Audio Company. This is the JBL Premium Audio Setup app. You can get from Google Play for Android devices or the App Store for iOS devices. So we have the Apple devices, and we were able to find the app. The barcode did work just well, and we loaded that in. And when we did pop this up, we did get the screen that showed our unit without configuring the wireless. They say just pop up the app, turn on the unit, and it does find the device, and then you're able to go through and configure the Wi-Fi, and which we did, and we brought up our network, we put in the password for our network, and it made the connection. Now, as this is the 9100, it does have Wi-Fi and Ethernet on board. This wireless connection, as configured through the app, probably the simplest way to get connected. Of course, you can go through the other setups and into network and manually put in either your LAN network or your Wi-Fi network, and all that is possible. Now, while it has you bring up that application, I don't think there's any real use for it during the configuration process. So that is more when you go to run and play music and play movies, and you have another tool to get in and select your sources. And the manual first talks about all the playback modes and configuring sources and all that. Now, we've complained before about JBL documentation, and we continue to be disappointed, and this is no different the way they've gone about this. When you get past all the playback stuff, they finally talk about essential setup. And they say before you use your receiver. Well, why didn't they put that first? They said it is essential that you enter some information into the setup menus about your speaker configuration. It allows the receiver to process any surround sound digital source to exactly match your system and give you the ultimate surround experience. There are 3 pieces of information: the speaker types, the speaker distances, and the speaker levels. Now, here is where I start to question JBL's claim that this modern audio line is designed for ease of use and targeting a market of people who are just coming into home theater and hi-fi systems. Well, the fact that when using the Easy Set EQ calibration app that comes with this, at no charge, the speaker levels and delays will not be established automatically when equalization is turned on. So therefore, the speaker size, the distance, the levels must be entered manually. Can you imagine somebody new to home theater having to go through and manually calculate the distances and set the levels? it gets worse. Because when it gets to speaker levels, they do say that it will generate a test tone for each speaker. And they say it should be measured with a sound pressure level SPL meter with a C weighting and slow response. I think they just lost the ease of use new home theater user without being able to calibrate the levels and forcing them to get an SPL meter. And they said, oh, a lot of these aren't really accurate, so go find one on your own that has a degree of accuracy. Now, their guidance here to adjust the speaker levels to absolute 75 dBs SPL is pretty common in the market. I think that's fine. And they also want you to measure the distances of each speaker to the main listening position. Do that through the setup menu. And they don't give much guidance beyond that. Now, there is a ray of hope for some of us because they say, well, Dirac is a PC Mac-based application, and it attempts to set the essential settings, those essential settings they talked about on the previous page, for all the speakers in your system. So it will do, the Dirac implementation will do the analysis of the signals and compute the speaker delays, the speaker levels. That should make it easier for you. You won't need to get out a sound pressure level meter. Now here's the thing is, Dirac is only available for the 2 HP models and only available for a charge. The limited bandwidth version, which goes from 20 Hertz to 500 Hertz, is $259. And if you want to go to the full bandwidth, that's $350. So you're going to have to pay for it. And you have to be comfortable enough to bring in a PC or Mac, load in the Dirac software, get the license configured, get an external microphone that works with the USB like a UMIC-1. And this is for the entry-level user who wants it simple. So while you're not needing to buy a sound pressure level meter, you still have to do all this other stuff, which not the casual user will want to do. When you think about Denon Marantz, and people complain that they have to pay for the Dirac license, but at least they include Odyssey, and that Odyssey process, if you want to accept the defaults, can run right from the receiver, calculates everything for you. While you may not be completely satisfied with the results, it's simple. A lot simpler than what's going on here. We'll come back in a later video and do the calibration and give you our feedback on the sound quality. But for now, let's talk about setting this up. So we know we have to enter in the levels and the distances, but before we even do that, you need to figure out what speaker layout you want to do. Now, if we go back to our overview video, we can see for all the different models in this lineup, and the 9100 is the most capable, supporting a 5.2.4 or a 7.2.2 configuration. Another thing that bothers me is when manuals don't describe all the speaker layout configurations the unit is capable of supporting. This manual only describes 5.1 and 7.1 configurations. But what about the 7.1.2 or the 5.1.4 configuration? No mention of it all in the layouts and how to wire that up. Doesn't spend much time talking about either the bi-amplification mode that it supports. JBL, please put a little more effort into your documentation. We got to think about what speaker layout we want to do. So we looked at our own home theater here. Now this theater is capable of doing a 9.2.4. That's 9 ear level speakers, including front wides, 2 subwoofers, and 4 height speakers, or 2 rows of height speakers. That's what it's capable of because we test everything. But for this unit, we know it can't do the front wides. That limits us to what speakers. So if we look at the MA9100, front left, right, and center, surround left and right are always available, and you can connect those with no extra choices to make. But when it comes to a choice between the rear surrounds and the height speakers, you have to decide whether you want 2 rows of heights or those rear surrounds. Now the first row of heights will always be available, and you get to choose the position of the height those will happen, but they'll be assignable on the 9100. But if you want to do the second row of heights, you have a choice with the rear surrounds. So here, while I have all the speakers, I have to decide which am I going to give up on. Do I want to give up on the rear, or do I want to give up on the second row of heights? Here's the other disappointing thing. Because you have to make these choices, one would hope to have several speaker presets. No, you only have one setting. So you can't go and set this all up for speaker preset 1 with rear surrounds and speaker preset 2 with 2 rows of heights. So I'm going to have to make a choice with this one. Now, if you have one of the lower price models, either the MA9100HP, which is like the 9100 with the direct option, or the 710 that doesn't have direct support, you lose 2 channels. So your assignables now go between a choice of 1 row of heights and the rear surrounds. For the MA310 and the 510, it's a 5.1 system. So you're just left with the left, right, center, and the surround left and right. And the subwoofers for all of these, 2 outputs, but they're wired in common, so 1 control on that. Getting into the setup, I hit the menu button, and this is a surprise to me. The menu is in the upper side of the screen. I thought this was in a special view where it was collapsed or whatever, but no, this is the most you see of it. It doesn't fill the screen. And I think they've taken code that was written for lower resolutions televisions and just plopped it in versus adjusting it to fit a larger television, or having that menu screen adapt to different size televisions if you've got high definition 4K or 8K television. So here you go. I wonder what this looks like on an 8K television if it's this small on my 4K television. So I'm going to hit the setup button, and I have a choice of source setup. We can leave that alone for now. Let's go right into speaker setup, and you can see there's no wizards here. The first thing it asks you is on speaker types. So the speaker types, really you're getting a choice of small or large. So large is full frequency with nothing going out to the subwoofers, and small is you're going to have a crossover and the lower frequencies are going to go to your subwoofer. If you don't have a subwoofer, set it to large. If you do, set it to small. If you feel really confident about your speakers, still set it to large, but I think small is going to work in most cases. So I go to the front left and right and hit the small there. And then I go down to the center, small, and then the surround left and right. We'll set that to small as well. On the rear configuration, we're going to set that to small. And here's where you have a choice, the amp assign. Remember I said this could be rear, or it could be a second row of heights. So there's the rear surround, which is the default. Top front, top middle are your 2 choices for that rear surround. So let's say it's top front that we want to do. Now we go to the height configuration, and we'll say that this one is also small, and its amp assign is going to be either top front, top middle, or top rear, or party mode, or bi-amp. Now a couple things here. Top front, we've already set the other one for top front, so I didn't reserve that. So can I set 2 to top front? That would be odd. That's odd. I can set both the rear config and the height config to top front, and it doesn't complain, at least at this stage of the game. So you have to be smart enough to know, don't set 2 to the same speaker location. Now I notice here on the rear config, I can do the rear surrounds, the top front, or the top middle. So I'm going to do top front on that one. And then on the height, I'm going to make it top rear. Now I alternately had a choice to say this was party. What in the world is party? Party is when they should have labeled this just zone. This is a second zone, so it's the same information going mixed down to a second zone. So that's the party assignment. And then the bi-amp is what you think. It would be the front speakers being bi-amped if you're not going to be using this channel at all. But we're going to say it's top rear. And then we can get out of this. Subwoofer, you have a choice of present or none. We have two subwoofers, so we're going to set that to present. And then for height type, you have a choice as their height speakers or they're Dolby enabled. They do not differentiate between wall-mounted height speakers and ceiling-mounted height speakers like other brands do. Furthermore, as this is only one setting, if you have any Dolby enabled speakers, it's an all or nothing. So let's say we had 2 rows of heights as we've configured this. This is making the assumption that both rows are going to be Dolby enabled or both rows are going to be the height speakers. Now this just turned off. There is a short timer on the setup menu, which I find a little annoying because if I wait too long between inputs on the configuration, it shuts off. So I got to hit the menu button again, go back to setup, go back to speaker setup, and go back and fix this so it's height. We don't have Dolby enabled speakers here. We have true height speakers. So no reflecting. All right, with the speaker set set, we can go into distances. The distances I have all figured out. This is the same things I've measured over the years. Units can be in feet or meters or in milliseconds. I think that's a good choice because, and really what you're doing with distances, you're putting in delays. And you notice with other systems, Dirac is doing everything in milliseconds. That's how it reports it after Dirac runs. So we do have a choice of milliseconds. That's what the MS stands for. But we're going to start with feet because we don't know what the delay is. That's going to be calculated by your room characteristics. So to get this kind of in the right place, you start with measured distances. So we put in here already 10 feet for the front, left, and right, the center at 12 feet, our left and right surround at 6.5 feet. So put that, back that down. I'm fortunate because my room is laid out pretty symmetrically, so the left is always the same distance as the right. In my case, you may not have that in your setup. Not everybody's able to do that. This room was sort of designed for home theater, but when I did put it together, I wasn't as knowledgeable as I am now. So we're also now looking at the top front and the top rear, and those are 6'8" from the listening position. Again, I balance those positions out. And they can't do this in increments less than 3 inches. So maybe I'll just go to 6'9". Now, if you are going to do direct calibration, this really won't be necessary. But if you're going to use their Easy Set EQ, it will be necessary. And then we get to subwoofer. Remember we said there was only one subwoofer out, and I have 2. And this is where having things in common could be problematic because these could be at different distances, and this is the one speaker type that are a little different in the distances. So in reality, what I have is the left front subwoofer is 8 feet and the right rear subwoofer is 7 feet. So putting this in, one's at 7 feet, one's at 8 feet. I'm splitting the difference and saying 7/6 between the two, but the timing may not be that accurate because you only have one subwoofer output. Might be good for some of us, and particularly if you only have one subwoofer, you're just fine. So we'll back out of this. This is all set up. And then you put in your speaker levels. Now, as you can see here, there is a test tone. And we can turn that test tone on. And when you do it, you don't first hear anything until you move down to your first speaker, and then you hear it. And so I've gone through and set the levels. I used REW because they said don't use some of those apps that are on your mobile phone because they're not too accurate. Use something more accurate, and maybe your dealer can help you, is what they say in the manual. So we used REW with a UMIC 1 calibrated microphone, and we balanced all these to 75 dBs. That's a process for another day. So the speaker levels in, we can go into crossovers, take a look here. Now they said this wasn't an essential setting, and by default we see that they're all set to 80 Hertz with a filter slope of 24 dBs. Now that filter slope can be 18 dBs, 12 dBs, or the default of 24. And you can decide whether you want the line 2 RCA unbalanced output on the back of this turned on or off. And I can see here the default is off, or we can put it into the famous party mode. Wonderful. And as we said before, there's no pre-outs on this. So you couldn't go to an amplifier. But if you were listening to 2-channel music, you could have that zone 2 out and party thing and go out to an external amplifier, and you get the 2-channel out through that. It's a little bit of a hack, but really it's not designed to work with external amplifiers except for your second zone. So that takes us through the basic configuration of this unit. So the speakers are there, and this will run now, but you've not done any calibration, either through the Easy Set EQ application or through Direct. So you have that option to take then your speaker configuration and your timings to the next level. But there's also some other menu choices for setup. We have a system menu. So under General, let's take a look at the network status. Now we said this came up automatically when we brought up their app. The type that I have set up here is wireless, and I can't change that right now because I don't have a hardwired LAN connection plugged in, what I would assume here. And you can see the status, and you can do a network reset. On the software setup, we can see the firmware version. So this is 175. One thing I noticed, as soon as I connected to the wireless, next time I power cycled the unit, it automatically did a firmware update with no prompting or asking me a question whether I wanted that update or not. Keep that in mind, and it did take a bit. You can also do your updates via USB if you do not have an internet connection. And then you can do a factory reset. And that's it for the setup. There is not a lot of choices here. There's not a lot on bass management and whether or not you're going to have, let's say, a bass come out through your main speakers, but also your subwoofer. So we'll have to see what happens if I set these to a large, but is that also still coming out the subwoofers or just the large speakers? Now we'll get into the usability stuff in a bit, but one quick feedback on this unit. Earlier in this video, I said the screen was gorgeous, but I think they're lacking some real critical functionality to this. When you're cycling through the inputs, the values are small. And I can't see from a distance what those values are, nor does it pop up on the screen as I'm cycling through. I think there's some real miss on that screen. So what are your thoughts on the initial configuration of the MA9100HP Do you feel like they're hitting the mark on the simplicity? Or do you feel like I do, that while there's not a lot of things to configure, they're asking too much from somebody that's just getting into this hobby? That feedback would be useful to the Ripewave audio community. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that thanks button, give us a one-time donation, always appreciated. Hit that bell notification for no charge at all. You'll be informed when the next video is posted. And pay attention to the affiliate link in here. So if you're interested in getting one of these, we'll get a small commission and no additional charge to you. If you buy it through that retailer or any other product during that session, we'll get that small commission. And I hope to see you back here real soon. Until the next time, keep evolving your audio experience.